Hello, and in this video we are going to think about how we can use tenses to show the relationship between the information we are giving. In this case, we're going to think about past perfect and using time clauses. So why it's a good idea to have a variation in your tenses and why we use these tenses in the first place. So first, let's think about our time expressions. So these can be referred to as subordinators. So time clauses with subordinators. That sounds like a very fancy term. However, really it just means words like when, until, by the time, after. So these kind of words, they're very useful and kind of everyday English, but the technical fancy term is subordinators. So we can use these to connect two actions in one sentence. So for example, if we look at these two ideas or these three ideas, so I will give you a moment to read. So there is nothing like wrong with the grammar of these technically. However, there is still some problems with them for the reader. So one problem we have is the actual timeline is not clear. So did these things happen at the same time? Or did one happen first and then the other one happened? So this is one problem. I made a decision, I handed in the resignation. Was that at the same time? I didn't understand the question until the officer rephrased it. Did that happen at the same time? I got home, the rain stopped. Was that at the same time? So one way we can change this is to use some past perfect sentences. So when I had made a decision, I handed in the resignation. I hadn't understood the problem until the officer told me. By the time I got home, the rain had stopped. So in this case, the timeline is much clearer. We know one happened first, and it shows a relationship between the actions. So one is affecting the other, or one action is important to the other in some way. So it's actually showing this is not a shopping list of facts, right? It's showing that this information is connected and one thing is affecting other, or one thing is leading to another. So it's a very efficient way of doing that is to use the past perfects. So how can we use past perfect? Well, let's think about the two actions. We have I arrived home and the rain stopped. So the first thing we need to do is decide what happened first. So this is our timeline, and we can see we have now. So all of this is going to happen in the past. So what happened first? Well, for us, the rain stopped. Okay, so that happened first. And then I arrived home. So if we're thinking both actions happened in the past, but the rain stopped first, and then I arrived home, and therefore how do we show the relationship between the actions? So we used past perfect with the first action. And it shows that the actions are connected, that one is either affecting the other or had some effect on it. And we can show this simply with, so when I arrived home, so we're using our subordinator, our time subordinator. So when I arrived home, the rain had stopped. So we know rain stopped, arrived home, and we know that there is some connection there. There is some relationship with those actions, and we know which one happened first. So let's have a look at another example. So the police officer told me, I didn't understand the problem. So again, we need to decide what happened first. Okay, so I didn't understand. Then the police officer told me. So again, we can use a subordinator in a time clause and show, so I hadn't understood the problem until the police officer told me. Okay, so again, we're just using a nice simple time subordinator, until, and we are showing which action happened first. Okay, let's have one more example. So I made a decision. I handed in my resignation. So again, let's think which one happened first and which one happened second. Okay, so I made a decision first, then I handed in my resignation. So we need our subordinator. So when I had made the decision, I handed in my resignation. And in this case, using the past perfect feels like there was a process happening, like a decision-making process happening. So it makes the decision feel more important, feels more considered than I made a decision, I handed in my resignation. So it's also changing the nuance, the feeling of what we are saying to the reader or saying to the listener. So we can see that using a combination of past perfect and using our time subordinators, we can get a lot more information and a lot more nuance into a single sentence. So let's have a look at some other examples of this, where the time is clearer and it shows a much better relationship between the actions. So let's look at example number 1. I will give you a moment just to read it. So by the end of the class, he finished the test. So this is a good example where the exact timing is not very clear. When did it happen at the same time? Like the end of class, the bell rings and he finished at the same time. So this is a good example where we need past perfect to show us the time order. So have a look at the sentence and think, what happened first and where should we put the past perfect? So really we can guess that the test finished first. So by the end of the class, he had finished the test. All right, and a nice time expression, by the end or by the time, they're kind of quite similar words. Let's have a look at one more example. So when he got to his hotel floor, he forgot his room number. So again, when did this happen? Did this happen as the doors opened of the elevator? So not very clear, and it would be much better to just show the relationship between the events happening. So when he got to his hotel floor, he had forgotten his room number. Okay, so again, the timeline is very clear and it shows a nice connection, a relationship between the information. Okay, one more example. So again, we need to add in some past perfect here. So which one happened first? Okay, so she didn't know she had lost her bank card until the server bought the check. So losing the card happened first. Server bringing the check happened second. So we're making it nice and clear what happened when. All right, last example. So after they had a Valentine's Day dinner, she broke up with him. So which one happened first? Okay, so this is a tricky one, I would say, because it sounds very strange. So after they had had a Valentine's Day dinner, she broke up with her boyfriend. So a lot of people learning English think like had. It sounds a little bit strange. And so one way that we can avoid the strangeness is the pronunciation. So we're not saying exactly the same sound twice. So it's not had. The first one gets reduced. We use schwa, a kind of sound. So had. So the first one, had. So they had a Valentine's Day dinner. So we're not using exactly the same pronunciation twice. So they had a Valentine's Day dinner, not they had. Okay, one reason it sounds strange. So a lot of people try to avoid using that had because it kind of sounds wrong, repeating the same word, but it is totally correct. So in this video, we looked at using present perfect and time clauses. So our time clauses, or the fancy name subordinators, were quite simple to use. So when, until, by the time, and after. And using our present perfect, we were able to show the relationship between actions. We could see that the timeline is much clearer. What happened first, or did they happen at the same time? And it shows a nice relationship between the actions. It shows that there are connections. So if you think about it in a nice, clear, kind of logical timeline, it gets much easier to use. So again, just think which happened first and then what happened, and yeah, everything gets much easier. So thank you for listening, and I hope that was useful.